Welcome to OM James. I am, you guessed it, OM James, and today is Talkin' Tuesday, and I'm gonna scratch my ear and then take these off my head because I realize I don't need them right now. There's no reason that we wear those right now. So today, what we're talking about is the pros and cons of being a retro gamer. Now, I know it's a hot topic. You know, it's kind of a divisive sort of topic, really, in the industry entirely. Is that being a retro gamer or a modern gamer? Because there really is a big difference. There's people that prefer to play games that came out a while back when they were younger, and people that like to play games that are modern and new and trendy and get all the visits and followers and views and everything else you can get from playing a modern game, something that's really hot and happening right now. And there's some crossovers in that too. There's some games that are reminiscent of those retro games that are kind of making a comeback too, like The Messenger, which I still will play on this channel. Maybe this week, we'll see. I'd love to play it. I have not even tried it yet, but I've read lots of reviews and I've seen lots of good things about it, so I hope that it's a good game, and I think it will be. I think it's going to be tough too. I think it's going to be like a Ninja Gaiden kind of style of tough. I think it's going to be a rough game, but I look forward to tackling that game with you guys and playing it together. But in the meantime, I'm trying to talk about retro gaming today. So the pros and cons about playing retro games, being into retro gaming entirely as its whole, and I'll break it down into 3 points. Let's do it like we usually do. Let's do 3 points. Starting with number 1, accessibility. Now, one of the great things about retro gaming is that when you first get into it, it's not like you're getting into a game. It's not like you're getting into a genre, like getting into a first-person shooter kind of genre, a strategy game kind of genre, a JRPG even kind of genre. Like, you're getting into an entire, not even like, it's hard to even find a word for it. Like, it's a whole class of games, like thousands upon thousands of games that you suddenly have access to. And these are games that you can play in so many different formats, whether it's a mobile format like Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, anything like that, or it's a more console-based format like NES, Super Nintendo, or N64, PlayStation 2. I wouldn't say PlayStation 3 is quite retro yet. PlayStation 2 is definitely retro. And having access to all that, like not even just access to it, like really just being aware of this whole world of gaming, like as it is right now when you play games that are modern, that are happening, that are all coming out right now and popular and famous, and people love them and make lots of money based on just playing those games, that those games are really kind of sitting on the shoulders of giants, these giants of a whole other, again, school, class, whatever, like world of games that you might otherwise not be aware of. These are games that created the genres that you played today. These are the games that made Battle Royale style games even possible. These are the games that made even Clash Royale possible. Like, these are the games that really set the foundation of what was yet to come, and to get access to those and understand this whole world of games that are out there that you've never played before, like, it's an exciting thing. Once you finally dive into that, it's like diving into the deep end. Like, you realize just how deep this thing goes. And the cool thing too is that a lot of the people that play these games, they played them many times. You know, if you get into that whole community of people that are into these games just like you are, and they play these games a lot of times, they've created guides for these games, they know the ins and outs of these games, they can give you hints and tips and tricks, and eventually when you get good at these retro games, because they're usually pretty basic in their mechanics, is that you can eventually get to where you can instruct other people on how to play these games better. You know, like I did it on accident. Like I play Super Mario Brothers 3 now, even like at other people's houses, and I play and I just start clinking into it, and people are like, wow, how'd you do that? Oh, do that again, do that slide, do that this, do that, get that whistle again, whatever. I can't get a whistle again, you know how it works in that game, but for the most part, you know, just pulling out those little tricks and things like that you kind of develop over time, and it's like a whole, even just like in retro gaming, when you get into like the Mario Brothers games or whatever, and you start getting into platforming in general, and you play platforming games, and you learn the mechanics of it, you learn how to really appreciate these games that came up with arbitrary rules that ended up becoming the industry standard. I think it's awesome. I have a list I'm looking over right now. Okay, so finding those guides online too, like the walkthroughs, the YouTube channels, not channels, maybe like videos that talk about these games. H.C. Bailey, if I can name drop real quick. He's a guy who plays through games in such a beautiful, entertaining way that I could sit and watch him go through the entire Dragon Warrior series. I did. I watched him play Dragon Warrior 1, 2, and 3. I got about halfway through 4. I got to Tulun, and I gave up on it. But the whole way there, though, it's like it's an entertaining trip because I was there before. I played 1 and 4 mostly, but I played the Dragon Warrior series pretty well, and I liked that whole series. And I played through it just watching him do it, and just the accessibility of that. Like, there are people that are already kind of built into the whole movement of retro gaming, to where you don't have to worry about jumping into something without knowing what's going on. Like, you are with friends, guaranteed. You don't feel like you're breaking into something entirely new. Instead, you're joining a club, you know, and it's helpful to look at it that way. I think it's really helpful. Okay, so the cost factor. Here's a big pro. Did I mention doing pros? I don't want to mention that yet, but we're doing pros, and the pro cost thing is the fact that you don't have to buy the newest consoles. You don't have to have an Xbox One. You don't have to have an Xbox 360. You don't have to have an Xbox. You don't have to have a GameCube, nor an N64, nor a Super Nintendo, nor a Nintendo. I guess Nintendo, to play Nintendo games. The point remains is that you don't have to have the newest consoles that come out. You don't have to be able to afford buying the newest games and buying a new controller. Even nowadays, like, you buy a new controller for your system and it's gonna be constantly like $100 just to get a new controller if you break one, or if your kids break one, or if, you know, it falls in the toilet because you like to play on the toilet, whatever it might be. That if you have to replace even the controller, it's that expensive, and it just the whole console system in general. And as they start including it, used to be they used to include in the Kinect, but these days they more include in things like the VR headsets and all that. Like, when they bring that into it, it just brings the cost higher and higher and higher. And as long as these systems are trying to get faster and more capable and have better graphics and better everything else that's coming out, all these new technologies we can't even talk about right now, that it's going to become more expensive. It's going to cost them more to make it, so they have to charge more for it. In the end, it comes down to costing more money. And you don't have to be a part of that. If you're into retro gaming, none of that stuff. You don't have to worry about keeping up with trends at all. You keep up with the trend that happened like 30 years ago, and you're good. You're set. Another good pro about it is that you don't have to... Okay, this is kind of a gray area. You don't have to buy the games. You should buy the games. And the gray area, people say that ROMs are a gray area. They're not talking about you going and downloading a game you've never played before, or downloading a game you've never owned before, or downloading a game you've never even heard of before. This is... if you were to get a ROM, a backup of a game that you currently own, then likely you'll be... I mean, I can't... Okay, I'm not a lawyer. IANAL. Like, this is not as a lawyer, but... the grayness comes in the fact that you might own that game. And if you do own that game, maybe it broke, maybe you put money into it and it broke and you can never play it again. Whatever it might be that you... Okay, that's all I'm going to say. I don't want to bite myself in the face. Put my foot in my mouth, something like that. I don't want to do all that. I don't want to put an egg on my face and all that. So instead, I'm just going to say that the legalities lie in the fact that you should be buying these games, put money into these games. But the big caveat is when you are not able to buy these games or play them otherwise unless you had a ROM. But that's one of the cost-effective measures, is that you don't have to go out to the store and buy a physical copy of the game and pay for all the DLC and all that. So that's pretty nice. Okay, the final pro we're doing is number 3, nostalgia. Now, I've loved games that I still play now almost every single day, that I always have loved and still do love, and that's the nostalgia factor. Like, those are the games that they're like home. They're like sitting down and eating my grandma's cookies. Like, but I can have them anytime I want to. Like, I can replicate grandma's cookies at a moment's notice. Why wouldn't I every single day? That's the same reason why I play games. And, actually, just recently, as in like today, I likened this to a nicotine addiction. Now, I don't know if you've seen me do it here and there, if you follow the channel for a little while, but I do a vaporizer kind of thing. And it's because I smoked cigarettes for a long time, far too long. Smoking cigarettes for a day is about 2 days too long, but I smoked them far longer than just a single day. And so I finally gave it up, and I've been doing this for about 3 years now, I want to say, like, no actual tobacco smoke. And I bring this up because in the same way that I cannot let go of my games that I love and I want to play every day, like, I go back to the nicotine. I want to inhale some nicotine so I feel better. In the same way, it's hard not to... I don't even have it on me. It's on the table behind me, but it's hard not to pull out that BitBoy and play some Dragon Warrior 4. Like, I'm halfway through Tulun. I'm at a good spot. I'm just getting ready to jump in where you get the statuette, and then you give it to the guy, and he gives you, like, I think it's 35,000 gold pieces, and then you combine that with at least 15,000 you've collected over all the stuff you've got, so you can buy that tunnel to build it to Endor. Like, I know, I'm all about it, and I want to play it right now. Like, that's where I'm at in the game, and I want to do that. I want to develop the game right now, but I'm not gonna. I'm also not gonna take a hit of my vape, little drag, a draw, whatever you want to call it, in my vape while we're doing the video. But I'm thinking about it in the same way that I'm thinking about those dang NES games that I have access to now, that I can play whenever I want to, and I love that. I love that about it. Kudos, by the way, to that BitBoy. I love that thing. A great thing, too, is coming back to that camaraderie, or that community that I mentioned before, is that you the nostalgia factor of it is kind of the magnet that draws the other people into it, like the other people that you might not even realize are into it. Let me give an example. So a buddy of mine, my coworker, I handed him the BitBoy. I talked about it for about a month. It took about a month to get to me, if you remember the conversations, but on the videos. But when I finally got it, and I brought it to my work, and I was playing it a bit, I showed it to him, and I handed it to him playing Super Mario Bros. 3, of course, because I just was like, I don't know, this game, that. Okay, there you go, check it out. And he sat. He was sitting at his table. He wasn't sitting on the table. That'd be weird. He was sitting down at his desk, and he played through the first 3 levels, just like I do. Like the way that I play it. And I knew this guy. I knew my coworker, my friend, my good friend. I knew that he was into Super Mario Bros. 3, but I had no idea that he was good at it. That was a game he played obviously several times before. So finding that out just by handing him the BitBoy like that, and he loved it too. He thought it was great. I mentioned him in a previous video. I think it was a BitBoy video, but he thought it was great too. And that nostalgia factor, that magnet that draws you into it, it's almost like a cult. I'll admit it. It's almost like a religion. It's almost like a belief system, a credence, whatever it might be. It's something that binds people together. I think that's awesome, and I love that about retro gaming. All right. On to the cons. Starting with con number 1, accessibility. So I'm going to repeat the same exact ones. I did accessibility, cost, and nostalgia. I'm going to do the same 3 for the cons. First is accessibility. Here's the drawback, is that if it's a new game, then you have to depend on your classic knowledge to play that game. So let's say Red Dead Redemption 2. All right, so you're pretty good at aiming and everything. Oh, I just bumped the mic. You play Halo, you played the kind of games that you need to play and practice at in order to get good at playing games like Red Dead Redemption 2, or let's say even just playing Red Dead Redemption 1. Having that past experience on it, you almost require that, and if you, that's kind of one of the drawbacks to not being a retro gamer, one of the pros to being a retro gamer, kind of a little bit of extension, but more like a con, the reasons why it sucks not to be a retro gamer. Is that if it is a new game, you do have to depend on it, and that actually, it's really nice if you are a retro gamer, of course, because then you can depend on that information. But if you don't have that, if you're not a retro gamer, then you can't depend on that. You don't have any kind of history to base it on. So, to retro gamers. All right, the next thing is I personally, when it comes to why I kind of almost have to be a retro gamer, is I cannot afford to keep up with the current trends. I still have an Xbox 360. I play the Super Street Fighter 4 on that thing, and Burnout Revenge, the re-release for the Xbox 360. I love those games for that, and that's good enough for me. Retro gaming, it keeps it in the cost. This isn't even a pro. It's not supposed to be a pro, but it's cool the fact that I don't have to keep on paying for all that kind of stuff. I can't afford it. I don't have to afford it because I'm a retro gamer, and I think that makes it worthwhile. Let's keep looking. Okay, here's a good con to being a retro gamer, is that finding the classic hardware is hard to find. So if you want to play it in its original state, original condition, original way it was meant to be played, then you play it say, Dragon Warrior 4. You play it on an NES with the cartridge that you plug in and you push down and you press the power button. And when you're done playing it, you save your game and then you hold reset and you press power. All those little bits of it right there, that's how you know the game. That's how you can play it. And that's the way it was meant to be played. And even playing it on the original hardware, and not even the NES itself, but just the cartridge. It was built for that medium. The limitations, the strengths, everything about that medium, it was built for that. That's why the game was ever playable to begin with. And so, where was I going with that? Oh, finding those original cartridges, and even original NES these days. I mean, it's not that hard to find, but it can be that hard to afford at times. It's not going to be as expensive an Xbox as an Xbox One X or S or whatever they're going by now. I don't know. It's an E. See what I did there? But I don't know how the prices compare to that. But I do know that it can be hard. It can be priceless. It can be painful to find a classic NES in good condition that can also play a very expensive game, depending on what it is. If it's going to be a hard to find game or it's going to be a really easy to find game, it's going to decide whether or not it's going to be expensive or cheap. But for the most part, it's going to be tough to find that situation exactly. If you emulate, it's a whole different story. But most of the time, if you really want to play it the way it's meant to be played, it's going to cost you a pretty penny and a pretty minute just to make sure you can find those things. Moving on to cost. Number 2, cost. Okay, as I was just saying, the cost of playing the real game on the real console. So you can play lots of backups and stuff. Not backups, I say backups. I mean, let's say re-releases, like the Wii Virtual Console and the Wii U Virtual Console. I think it had one too. I don't know much about that system either. But then also the 3DS Also has some re-releases you can play on there too, and also the Switch. Duh, of course, the Switch you can play some re-releases like old classic NES, SNES, N64 games that you can play on those systems. The Wii, I know always it's now, for now and probably forever, will have the best virtual console collection. Even like TurboGrafx 16 games, like that thing was cool. That thing, King Booty, I dig that thing. To this day, I'm gonna mourn it. As the date passed, I think the date already. Dang it, I think the date already passed that it's no longer. But you can't go onto the Wii store and buy anything anymore. You can't download the systems anymore. But if you have a modded Wii, that'll still work because you can put it into a different OS. But anyway, we're not talking about modded Wiis because that's another gray area. But playing those games on the original console the way they're meant to be played, it's going to be a cost ineffective thing to be doing because it's going to be expensive. It's going to cost you money a lot more in the long run too, as you want to start branching out the different consoles you want to cover. You want 8-bit, 16-bit, and all that, and the games themselves too. Especially if it's a game that you see a video of and you think it looks really cool and you really want to play that game, and you go looking for it, and you might find out that the cartridge itself is going to cost you like $300 just to actually be able to try the game in its original format the way you were meant to play it or you wanted to play it. That just all that, it's going to cost you a lot. It adds up really quickly. Again, emulation negates all that. But if you're not emulating, then actually playing these games can actually be very, very cost ineffective. Finally, we're getting near the end here. Let's cover the nostalgia factor, the cons to nostalgia. Number 3, nostalgia. So one thing that happens sometimes when I get into nostalgia and playing games that I love to play, playing the games that give me those warm fuzzies inside, is that I sometimes get kind of stuck in a rut. Like I end up playing the same games. Let me say it one more time this episode, is Dragon Warrior 4. I've played that game through probably 24 times at this point. Like I love that game. I love the story. I like the pace of it. I like grinding. I've learned through the years to get to grind even better and better to where like I'm not going to do this part until I get to level 5. And I get to level 5 and I go there and I stop it. Then I'm not going to do the next part until I get to level 10. Then I get to level 10, maybe 11, and I get there and I stop it. Like, I love that. Like, I get to where I know the mechanics of it. It's almost like this game that took me so long to master, I'm finally putting it under my thumb and making it, sorry, technical difficulty there. But anyway, the whole thing is I get in kind of a rut playing these games, and I get really nostalgic about them, and it's almost like playing the same songs in your car every single time you drive to work, and if you play a different song that doesn't quite feel right, it's kind of what I do with those games. I don't mean to, I don't want to, but I end up doing that same dang thing. But that's kind of one of the cons about it. It is hard to branch out and try a new game when I know that, just like starting a new TV show, like it's a jumping in kind of thing. I can't just lightly start playing a new whole series and franchise, listen to what I'm getting into. Like, it's hard to watch Doctor Who, it's hard to get into Final Fantasy, beyond Final Fantasy 6. Like, there's a whole world there I'm not a part of, and it's hard to get into it. That's one of the nostalgia problems. Actually, that about covers it right there. That was the whole nostalgia thing. I had 3 bullet points on here, and I covered all 3 of them with one little rant right there. So that's the end of the nostalgia thing. I'm just about done with the video right here, about 18 minutes or so. So one thing that is exciting is this is a really, really great time to get into retro gaming because it's making kind of resurgence. Like people are getting back into it. Like the people that have been into it have received enough encouragement to embrace that side of what they love, that side of their geekdom, that it's a good time to get into it. It's kind of a perfect time to be getting into retro gaming, and a cheaper time too, because there's such a demand for it. There's so many options. I have the BitBoy. It costs about $40. You guys know that if you saw the last episode on last Tuesday. But it's a cheap industry to get into, and a fun industry. Again, thousands of games, a whole community of comrades behind you, and a lot to talk about, especially if you like this channel. You know how I like those retro games. I play them fairly often. So anyway, guys, we're going to leave it right there. That's a good little Talking Tuesday. Thanks for letting me rant to you for a little bit. If you got this far into it, let's do a hashtag grape juice. Hashtag grape juice. If you can pull that off, then I will see you guys in the comments below. I'll reply to it if you do that hashtag. That's the new thing, right? From now on, you do that hashtag, then you get a reply in the comments. Doesn't matter now, but wait till I get like 10,000 subscribers. Gonna happen one day. Who knows? You guys are great. You know I care about you. You know that I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad that you are glad that I'm here, and that's why you're watching right this second. But we're going to leave it there again. So, what was left? There was one more. I remember, as always, OMJamers, make somebody smile today, guys. Yeah. Have a good week. I'll see you guys next week. No, Thursday. Gameplay Thursday.